Alright, so today we're going to talk about Grindal worms. Had some questions as far as, when the cultures come in, what to do with them, how to care for them. So this is what you're going to get. We have a few different containers that we use, just depending on availability. So this is one, it's just your little Rubbermaid containers. This culture here, we've got a couple different dates, and I brought up a few different ones from our cultures. That way we could see different sizes, what to look for. And then these are fairly new setup. This one here is, probably maybe a week old, something like that. It's about negative 17 degrees with a wind chill of negative 40 today, right around there. So not doing any shipping, so I figured we'd make a video. So I had some questions as far as getting the cultures in. I'm going to show you how to harvest some of these, what to do with them, how to grow them out. So you get your culture. We've talked about setting it up in a couple different videos as far as using soil and using the scrubber pads. So now we're going to talk about the culture itself. So when you get these in, you can see there's a few different tops going on here. This is just me trying out different ways of sealing these holes. This one here we're using paper towel. So we just cover a little hole. You can see it there. There's a little hole in the center. Just cover the hole with paper towel, tape the sides, keeps the bugs out, keeps the worms in. This one here I'm using pillow batting. This one takes me a little bit longer to do. That's why I'm trying something else, make it a little quicker, streamline. So anyway, I guess I'll leave these off. These were all set up at the same time. So we're going to see a few different ways that your cultures could come in and different questions that I've had. As far as what they look like. So I got a question the other day, did you send me spiders with my worms? No, it's mold. So the food molds in some of these, as you can see. Some of them look a little different than others. Some of them have more worms than others. And then if we look over this one, I needed to feed it, so that's why I brought it up. You can see this one's actually, it's just going nuts. See if we can get in the light here. That white stuff, that's all the worms. So it's absolutely loaded down. So what we feed is cat food. I use the cheapest stuff possible because it's grain based. It's actually horrible for your cat. Probably don't want to feed it to your cat, but the fish will like it because it's full of vitamins and the worms love it. So this is what I use to feed the worms. We'll look at some ingredients. So corn, soybean, I mean the first ingredients are horrible for your cat, but it's full of vitamins, minerals, which our fish need and the worms need, and the worms like the grain-based food, so that's what I use. Alright, so when we look at the mold in this one, you can see there's worms in the center, they're eating the food, but a lot of people will take and they'll throw that away when, let's see if we can do this here. If we pick up that moldy piece of food, it's going to have some soil attached to it too because it all grows together. But there's worms in there and they're actually eating it from underneath. So don't throw it away. Use it. Everything needs to be used. They're worms. I mean, they're used to eating crap in the soil. So you don't want to go and just throw this stuff away because it looks bad to you. You have to remember they eat different things than we do. So they'll eat your old food and things like that in your garden. Some of these, they don't look like they're doing much, but underneath, they go down in the soil. So we move this around a little bit, you should be able to see some worms in here. If not, this one will be getting started over, and there's some down there in the soil. So what they typically do when they sense vibration is they go into the soil. These things get shipped, they get shook around, they're upside down, on their sides. A lot of positions they don't like. So the worms tend to hide. Let's see if we can focus. And there we go. The worms don't like it, so they tend to hide. You might get a little bit that'll die off depending on temperatures, things like that. That's why we're not shipping today, is because it's so cold out. But some of these are just absolutely booming. doing extremely well. So you can take a look at this one. These were all set up on the same date. My camera's not wanting to participate today. So there you go, those are all worms. They've pretty much eaten all their food, so we're going to refeed. And then I brought up a few normal cultures too that I use, a couple different sizes, so we'll take a look at those too. As far as these go, if you guys have any more questions on any of these or what you're getting in, let us know. That way we can address the questions, maybe help answer some questions, make another video based on your questions. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to show you how to harvest off of these scrubber pads. I have had some questions on this as well. I prefer scrubber pads over soil. It's just easier to ship with the soil. That's why we use soil when we ship, and I show you how to set them up with soil because they tend to grow a little bit better. Make sure you ask questions. Don't jump to conclusions because, I mean, it's something that's a little bit different, so it's going to be a little hard. I have a little spray bottle. What we're going to do is feed some of these because they eat everything. So I just take a couple pieces of the cat food, just kind of put it in there, give it a little spritz with water just to make sure it's damp enough. 4 pieces, 5 pieces in that. Spritz it. And that's it. And then I just go through and check these, and some of them need a little bit of spritz. I check them daily just to make sure they're doing good before they ship. But this is pretty much how it goes, but on a larger scale. And this is what you do with yours at home too. Just check them once they get their food gone. You know, we're pretty much eaten, like this one did, or that other one there. And you just refeed it. So this one here is getting close, but I'm not going to feed it yet because then they'll have too much food. And that's where you tend to get your mold, is when you're just setting up a culture, or you put in a little bit much food. So anyway, we'll cap these off, and we'll talk about harvesting from a scrubber pad, which again is my preferred method of keeping. I noticed there was a person on, I believe it was eBay. We sell on eBay, Amazon, and our websites. He said that we had mites, but we don't have mites, and the cultures don't go out with mites. So I'm assuming it was his soil, or he was just a negative person. So the only time these things touch soil is when they go into these, or when they're at your home if you decide to use soil. Otherwise, this is how we keep ours. This is a little mini one that I set up for one of the videos, so I've just been keeping it. Otherwise, we use bigger containers like these, or even some shoebox size ones like this. I prefer these, or there's the, we have a few down in the fish room that have the red lids. They're almost like 9 by 11 cake pan size with the nice seal lids like these. If you use these shoebox ones with the white lid that clips on, or the pink lid or whatever, there's too much of a gap here, and you tend to get, like, you'll get some fruit flies in there. So you want to try to avoid that. So anything that seals tight, seal up all your little holes. Used a few different things. I think I used this one on one of the videos that we made. The dog is bugging me to go out. So what we're going to do is harvest from here. So you can see all that white on. Let's see if we can zoom in. That's actually worms on the food too. We'll lift this up and you'll see. So this is some of the food that we use, and the worms are all over. So they actually use these scrubber pads as soil, and they'll crawl through them and eat the food, and you just need to make sure that you're spritzing them and keeping them damp. So we'll go ahead and, because those scrubber pads will dry out. And it's okay to put a little extra water in the bottom. It'll soak up in the pad. So we'll seal this one off. Set it aside, and we'll check this one out. So you can see this one has a ton, and I put some extra scrubbers in here so I could transfer. This is usually how I'll feed too. I'll just take this out and feed off of it. So you can see all those worms that are, they're even crawling the sides. This one's insane. So tons of worms. They're all over this thing, and I'll show you here in a second when we get some water. So I'm gonna take the lid off my spray bottle. And we just dump it in here. So about an inch of water in the bottom. And we'll just take this right out of our culture, put it in the water, shake it around. And if you do get any bugs or anything in your culture, this is a good way to get rid of them because the worms sink, everything else floats. So there's still some on here, quite a few actually, but we'll leave them in here. So I'll put that back in there, the lid on, and we'll see if we can get a good picture of these worms. So this is off of just that one. I mean, there's literally millions. And you can feed like this too and just get like a little pipette or something. You can suck them up in the pipette. And then, let's see, if you do use soil, and say this person on eBay who was very upset and said that we had mites, which we don't. If you do have mites, this is a good way to separate the mites from the worms themselves. The mites will float, their eggs will float, the worms will sink. Just fill up a container of water and then or a cup or whatever, do something similar to this, and then you can dump off the top and then just keep filling it up and dumping off the top and just keep repeating. Make sure you let it settle after you dump in more water, that way the worms can go to the bottom, the bugs can go to the top, and then you're just dumping them off. These things will survive in water too for days. All of the fish tanks in my fish room are bare bottom. We raise a lot of cories and angelfish. And if I have a tank with some little baby cories in there, and I'll throw these in there, and they won't eat them all in one go. I've seen worms in the bottom of those for, 2 days, that are maybe even longer, that are still wiggling around. So they actually will survive in water. So this is typically how I'll make up all these cultures too. It eliminates anything that, if, say, for any instance, one of these did get bugs in it or something like that, which I've never seen. This is kind of my fail-safe, and then I'll use my pipette, suck it from the bottom, and then go and squirt some on all the cultures and get those all primed and started. So this is a good way to feed too, is just like this. It cleans them before they go in if you're using soil or whatever, because you can use the needle point that we use in here, the white mesh stuff. You can set this on top of your soil, but it's going to get covered with all the worm poop and dirt and stuff like that. So if you want to rinse it, you just rinse it in your water just like we did, and that'll get most of that off. The dirt's going to go to the bottom though, so you're going to want to rinse it a few times. Even the lid's got a bunch of worms on it. So that's probably the best way to feed it, I think, is use something like this. These smell a lot worse, or a lot less, than your soil ones. The soil ones just smell absolutely horrible. But again, it's easier to ship with soil, so the worms can hide in the dirt a little bit better. Anyhow, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask. Make sure you give us a like, and subscribe. If you have more questions on there, you go ahead and feel free to ask them out in the open, or you can go to our website, gillsandfins.us. At the bottom of the page there is an email link. Feel free to shoot us an email with your question if you want to keep it kind of on the low, and don't want everybody on the forum seeing. You can order on there as well. Otherwise, thanks for all your guys' support, and ordering worms, and feed your fish the best. Thanks.